So this is going to be, hopefully a great conversation. We definitely want to be able to get your input on everything. And can we get the slides going? Can we share our deck?
Yes, I'll share. And when you're ready to go to the next screen, you could just let me know.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
Yes, I do. I see it now. All right. So once again, this is the financial effects of COVID-19 on millennials and also Gen Zs, and just also just healthy ways in which, we can all kind of share this information with our community and how, it can be represented, through our local city government. All right, next slide, please. But before we get started, I know how you guys love an icebreaker. So we're going to do a quick icebreaker. I know it's the middle of the afternoon, but we kind of want to get you guys loose and kind of get you thinking. So this icebreaker is, what's your favorite decade and why? So we have like the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 50s. So I just kind of want you guys, if you want to throw it in the chat box, you can just let me know what's your favorite decade. If you want to shout it out, just shout it out. And let me know, why is your favorite decade?
The 80s.
I personally like the 50s.
The 80s is the best decade because that's when I was born. But no, no, I think that it was just like the sort of emergence of, new technologies that are now kind of revolutionized our lives. And, I think that was kind of like the dawning of the age of ingenuity. That's when the baby boomers were kind of at their peak and they were starting to have their own kids. And that was the largest generation of Americans. So, it was just definitely a time of innovation in music and thought. And, I do think that was kind of where we also started having a lot of conversations, that, all of the turmoil of the 60s and 70s, we were getting to, just kind of a normal, where things were just starting to mellow out. And that's why I like the 80s.
Yes. I do agree. And I see some other people saying the 80s. They're saying why? Because the music was good. The music was good. Troy says the 90s. A lot of people don't like the 90s. Nobody's saying the 2000s for you all that were maybe born like 2000. But no, you would be you'd be in your 20s. No 2000 people. Okay. So the 80s was all right.
The 80s. Thriller. All I can say is Thriller.
Thriller.
I remember going to the movie theater and watching it a few times. It was like they have the I don't know if it was like a matinee or something, but I remember being little. I was little, and I remember being in a movie theater seeing Thriller, and then we used to. And I remember, I don't know if this was I think it was the late 80s. They had the basketball championship, and we were downtown. I remember being on my father's shoulders and screaming, and they were throwing stuff off the floats and everything. Yes, the 80s was, yes. In the early 90s, but the 80s was, yes. Different world, kind of.
I used to try to dye my hair all the crazy colors, and if you guys remember, you could put Kool-Aid in your hair to dye it, but I'm getting way off track. So we're going to go to the next slide. And so one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to bring that icebreaker up was just because, every generation has had to go through something. It's just a matter of how we get through it. And then, a lot of times we get through it with community, but we just don't know how. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring that icebreaker up. But our guest speaker today is going to be Ernestine Lyons. She's already been speaking. Like I said, she's a city council member of Harper Woods. She's also the owner and founder of Lynn Global. She can tell you a little bit about that. She is fearless when it comes to learning and speaking different languages. And she does this traveling by herself to different countries. I don't know how, but that's what she does. And also she has her master's degree from Wayne State. So before we hear a little bit from her, we're just going to go to the next slide. And I'm just going to give these very brief facts and give her some room to kind of speak. So the effects of the recession the effects of what we're going through right now with Gen Z and the millennials, they're going to say that this is going to be very detrimental to them, and they may not be able to come out of this until 2055. And that's a long way from now. So we kind of got to figure out, like, how are we going to, as coaches, get them through that? How are we going to share the information that we have, within Wayne Metro to them? We definitely do not want them to be missed. A lot of them are still recovering, like their families are recovering from the Great Recession of like 2008 or 2005. And that's when you had that big housing industry that was going on, and a lot of people were losing their homes. So a lot of those people would be like, maybe myself and my age group. And then, maybe I would have had children that are millennials, and maybe millennials are not having children, that are generational Gen Zs. So we just want to know how to get a handle on that. Next slide. All right, so some of the effects that they are saying right now of COVID-19, what's happening is that more 18 to 29-year-olds, they are returning back home. They're living back with their parents now because of COVID. They're not working anymore, or their jobs, they've lost their jobs, and now they've had to take on jobs at fast food restaurants, so they're getting less money. A lot of them have fear of defaulting on their loans. They have limited job experience, especially if they've just gotten out of college. A lot of them are afraid to even start families because they figure like they can't afford it right now. And because of COVID, they are indulging in a lot of risky behavior that's having an effect on their mental state. They're projecting that Gen Zs and millennials may have shorter lifespans because they're drinking more. They're doing some other things right now. It's not going to put them in a good place. And 44% of people that are affected right now and that are being laid off are people of color. So the main thing right now is like, how do we help? So one reason why we have Ernestine here on the call, because from what I've researched, it's saying that we need strong and aggressive government intervention. Like, how do they step in? How do they make policy? What do we do? Do we keep giving out emergency reliefs for everyone? The next thing that I found out is extensive and grassroots focused policy. Like, we need to do some things in the community. And what can some of those things be? The next would be to make sure that they, like the Gen Zs, or, as you're able to vote, that they get out and that they vote in their local and their state levels of government. Next slide, please. All right, so here is just a quick graph on what is really going on. If you kind of notice, like the baby boomers are in the dark blue, and then you have the millennials and the Generation Zs. They are, in the either gold or the light blue. And by the graph and the information that's giving, they are the ones that really are suffering. So the Gen Zs, they are very much so worried about the difficulty of paying their rent and their mortgage and their utility bills. They're having difficulty, with like medical costs. And then they're worried about the difficulty of repaying their debts. So right now, the student loans, we know they're in forbearance, but what happens when they come out, next slide. And right here, because I want this to be more less of me talking, but as a group, we can just kind of come up with different ways on how do we identify the roadblocks with the Gen Zs and the millennials. So how do we identify that? What's stopping them, from getting help, and then how do we help them? And then how can we become more visible, in the communities for these populations of people? And as we work through this, I want to be able to fill that information in, and then we can upload it onto Microsoft Teams, and then you guys can finish putting that information in. So I'm going to go ahead and turn everything over to Ernestine and let her go ahead and get talking. And I just want to say this, one of the reasons too why I also wanted her to speak is because I do believe she's in the millennial age group. And Ernestine is the type of person where if she sees it, she wants it, she gets it. She's not going to let anything kind of get in her way. She creates opportunities. She's come into different communities and created business ideas for those communities, and they've taken off, and they have helped like the demographic of people that we're talking about. So go ahead, Ernestine.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for having me here, and I'm super, super excited to be here. I am guilty as charged. I'm a millennial. So I am an elder millennial, as they call them now. But I've also heard geriatric millennial, and I'm just like, that's not fun. But so I am 35, and that's fun. The fun thing is, I think a lot of folks will say, "Oh, these millennials," and I'm like, don't you realize we're almost 40 now? Some of us. And then as far as Gen Zers, you guys are all in your 20s and things. So time waits for nobody is a lesson that we're learning, no matter what catchy phrase. Because I used to think the cool ones were the Generation Xers, and you guys were all hip and happening and all that. So thank you so much, Alyssa, for having me here. And I do want to give a little bit of background on myself. I do work in small business development, and then I also work in policy. So in addition to being a city council person in the city of Harper Woods, I work in the Michigan legislature as a policy liaison for Senate District 2. So that is Grosse Pointe, Hamtramck, Harper Woods, Highland Park, and Detroit and the Grosse Pointe communities, and of course Harper Woods. So to just jump right into it, I think that there are a lot of alarming statistics out there, and I know that Alyssa shared some of the information about like how millennials are. I want to say we're the most resilient of all of the different demographics in American society, where we've had to deal with struggles. We've had to face the 2008 recession when we were coming of age. We had to face a crippling student debt. We had to face housing bubbles. And then in addition to that, we faced the pandemic. And then mass joblessness, and so all kinds of things that have been happening over the course of our lifetime. And now that the oldest of us are turning 40, it's essentially something that we've had to navigate with none of the resources and safety nets that were available to, say, my parents are baby boomers, and their generation. I really think they were given the whole farm, because without college degrees, both of my parents were able to, make $50,000 a year and, get houses and, have investment properties and, just do all kinds of nice things like that I think has been elusive to my generation. Another statistic is, as far as even home ownership, millennials, we're definitely becoming homeowners later and later in life. They say the average age is about 35, but then when you factor in, issues like race and income, the average age for home ownership, goes up. For example, if you are African American, the average age for home ownership is about 48. So that's when you become buy your first house, based on a lot of other statistics. So we are definitely delaying things. As Alyssa mentioned, I don't have kids personally because I need to be somewhere financially before I can bring little Ernie Jr. into the world. And I just think that, also being a homeowner would be something I'd like to do before, having kids. So and then also like finding partners, dating during a pandemic, and all of those kind of fun things that millennials are definitely, we're doing things later, but we're also, really, really sticking to kind of like our own path. And I think because we were, it was funny because I was watching something that talks about how the TV show Rugrats is an example of intergenerational sort of like a snapshot of what life is like, because you've got baby boomer parents raising overly coddled kids who are spoiled, and they're like, the Angelica is got the power suit mom who's always working, but yet Angelica is spoiled, and then the dad who's like super overprotective. So I think that's been us as far as millennials. And then now we kind of wanted the participation trophies, and we've been told that you can go out and do anything, which is a bad thing, but then in some ways it's a good thing, because it's kind of created this sense of we really want to do work that is very mission impacted, and then do work that's like very impact oriented. So for example, you'll find a lot of us millennials I know most of my friend group, we work in nonprofit organizations. We work for causes that we really believe in. But we also want to, ask what we're worth. So we're willing to, do the thing that we want to do on the side to start businesses. So, that's something that I know that there was a Pew Research sort of statistic that said, more millennials went into business during the pandemic, because working from home allowed flexibility. It allowed flexibility in the fact that you don't have to now spend all of your time at a 9 to 5, and you're allowed to, kind of have that remote work, freedom that allows for you to have some of your other things to thrive. And another thing about millennials and Gen Zers, we also we really are the like kings and queens of the gig economy. So we work multiple gigs. We do Grubhub, DoorDash, Airbnb out our places, and so it's all about sharing the resources and sharing the knowledge, and that allows for that income. So I don't know anybody in my age group who doesn't have multiple gigs. I work 3 jobs, and I was able to take on a second during or technically the third during the pandemic because of the flexibility. And there was another statistic that said that a lot of millennials would rather quit their jobs than go back to working a 9 to 5 in an office, as we had a year of this remote work life that people really got used to. And I think employers are really recognizing that it's more about productivity, and that, their employees were super, productive during this time. And, so we were able to do things that we wanted to do for a really long time. I remember when I worked for the city of Detroit under the Civil Rights, Inclusion, and Opportunities Department as a business opportunity coordinator, a few of us had the option to work from home. And, I just felt that it was like, oh my gosh, this is so groundbreaking. And, then to think that like a year later, still working in business development, we would just be working from home remotely. I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is, a possibility. So I think those are some of the things that, millennials, we face those challenges, and then now we're prepared to push for, corporations to kind of be more accountable to some of the things that, they are really pushing for, as far as, the fight for 15. We really want corporate social responsibility. And what that means is, we're willing to make our employers, really do better by us. So we're not going to settle for, a non-living wage. And that's another thing that I know Trevor Noah was just kind of talking about that on The Daily Show, mentioning, essentially you have people who are quitting restaurant jobs, and then this, very conservative kind of mind frame or mantra that you're hearing a lot is, oh, people don't want to work. No, it's like people don't want to work for $4.75 an hour and then have to be so dependent on tips. There's no way in the world that in America, you should be essentially having to work for that. That's not a livable wage. And then, because you can't live on tips either, you could just pay more, especially if you're big corporations. There's no way in the world that Walmart, that McDonald's, that Starbucks can't afford to pay a $15 minimum wage, or just a living wage, depending on where your state is. So it's just, we're really fighting for that. And I think that one thing about Gen Z is they're willing to take to the streets, to march, to get policy change around, just financial things, to really be able to let us be able to live on our terms. Because, making $15 an hour in my parents' generation, that was like, you're rich, and, you're making that, and then, houses are affordable, and you can, work anywhere without a college degree. Whereas nowadays it really, people want you to have a master's degree and experience before you can get an entry-level job. So, I think that my biggest push in terms of, Alyssa's question, like how can like elected officials like myself or policymakers really advocate for better financial literacy for, the next generation, for us, millennials, and for Gen Z, and then for everybody else. I really think it falls down to really pushing for, that policy change. The policy changes that we fight for. I know working in the Michigan legislature, we fight for things like small business development, because so many people are going into business now. We fight for the little guys. We fight for those mom and pop stores that are, you go to downtown Detroit or, downtown Ann Arbor, and you have a lot of like startups and new businesses and people who are scrappy and, they want to be able to be supported, so we really want to advocate for more small business support. And then at the same time, we also want to, have a robust workforce. We want to have resources for workforce development. And then it's also student debt, because when you think about it, you've gone and got this $50,000 degree, and then you can't really pay it off because you're working $15 an hour, working and making $15 an hour. Then how are you ever going to break even? It's like you're going to be paying off that debt for 30, 40 years, and then don't even think about a mortgage. So it's really about the policy that we fight for. And I'm extremely grateful that we have a lot more millennials in Congress now as well. In addition to Gen Zers who are, kind of with it, and they recognize, that, some of these policies that folks like who Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, they're older. They're from, either the silent generation or, elder baby boomers, and they just don't really see that people can't pull themselves up by their bootstraps with what the policies that we're pushing now. And, it really does have to come down to, folks like, my Gen Z friends who are going to take to the streets and march and protest to, get these policy changes. And, they'll show up, they'll write letters, they'll start these campaigns to talk to their elected officials. And I really think that, it does start at that grassroots level where you've got advocacy groups who are really out here pushing for, some of these policy changes. And that's really where it starts. But I think even on my level, like I'm a city council person, and I think my biggest thing is fighting for and supporting things like what Alyssa does. Alyssa is a part of our Neighborhood Economic Development Coalition, and she and another community volunteer, Amina, they are always coming up with workshops to, educate people on financially what to do. Like, what are some faux pas? What are some things that you need to do, in order to reach to a certain savings point? How can you, cut back on certain things? How can you maximize your income? And then other things that I like to provide for the community are workshops on investing in you. For example, if people are interested in investing but don't know where to start, I'll bring in experts so that people understand, of all ages, what does your retirement, account look like, and, what should it be looking like if you're, in your 40s, and, things like, looking at different aspects of, just investing. What is Bitcoin? What is a cryptocurrency? And I think giving people knowledge on those kind of things, and a big thing that I know people in my generation are huge on right now is the FIRE lifestyle, which is financial independence and retire early. That is a goal for me, because there are a lot of folks who have at 39 retired, and they just become very frugal. They are minimalist, and they grow their own vegetables, and they scrimp and save. They don't buy new cars, they don't buy new clothes. They'll wear things until they fall apart. They'll go thrifting, and they'll find really affordable ways to cook, and so it's all about being extremely frugal, and then saving everything, investing everything, all of your funds, and you're watching everything like very closely, like you're budgeting like nobody's business, and you're just always getting the education on how to invest your money. I know I started investing for the first time during the pandemic last year. I bought stock, and then I took it to the next level and got a wealth management professional to consult with me, and told me how to take that stimulus, that $1,000, and put it into, an investment account. So, to be able to have index funds works for me. So it's something that is a goal of mine, but I know it's not always attainable for everybody. And so it just it means less traveling. And I mean, Alyssa mentioned that, I love traveling, and that was a pre-pandemic thing that, you know, my small business is all about, you know, teaching people the importance of learning a foreign language and having an international experience. But that's something that came to a halt with the pandemic. So, you know, that was an opportunity, I think, for saving, because I wasn't working in the office and eating out. And so, you know, cooking more and able to be more conscious of, you know, your health so that you don't have to worry about medical bills down the line. So I think that in some
I
ways.
want to ask you
Uh-huh.
a question. The question. So with what you're saying to the other coaches and whatnot, do you guys have like a lot of your clients, do they fall within that Gen Z age group, and then also to that millennial age group? Are you guys reaching those people? Are you reaching that population of people? Because if we aren't, then we need to know what we need to do so they won't fall in the cracks, right? Because we want them to be successful, and we want to get these tips, and you know that Ernestine's getting about, you know, the fire, I've not heard of that term, but that and some other things. We want to get that information out to them. My client base they're not millennials. They're basically like Gen Xers and boomers.
Mm-hmm.
I get a lot of those as my client base. But if you guys are getting the other client base, then how can we get this information that she's saying to them? And then how can we work with her so we can get that information out? So if you guys have any questions, just jump in.
A lot of mine are, I get Gen X's. I have a few older generations. I guess those are baby boomers. But I have a lot of Gen Xers and a lot of millennials. And I think a lot of them, I think social media is definitely a way to get to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll be real, but as soon as I get off of work, my first thing I do, because I usually leave my phone away from me. I go straight to the kitchen table where it's at, and I check my Instagram, I check my TikTok, and I check my Facebook. So, because, you know, you miss a lot. I'll be honest, like, when you're seeing ads on the freeway, that's a good thing. I think that another thing would be social, like, it's coming up on summer, and socialization is about to be big with the vaccines. So, I know like a lot of the festivals were canceled, but there's still going to be events downtown. People are still going to go down to the Riverwalk, because as millennials, we love to be downtown, or we love to, like, a lot of us are just getting into fitness again. So I noticed a lot of us are hanging downtown, going for walks, local parks, anything that has an event. Like, the biggest thing right now are day parties. So if y'all find out about an event that's going on, see if we can have some people handing out flyers, not too far from the event, in the walking distance of where they're going to be parking at. Like, if you want to reach them, also having seminars. Like, most of my clients that are millennials, they love the fact that they can talk to us over the phone or do a virtual meeting. They love that because they have stuff to do and they're busy. A lot of them have children, or a lot of them are in school still, because a lot of millennials are actually in school. Like, that's the crazy thing about it. Like, most of my friends, even if they have families, they're buying houses or renting, but they're in school because this is the time for them to go back to school, because education is starting to be free for the ones who are working during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are busy, or they're trying to get themselves together. So the phone calls and being available virtually, rather than them having to come to a building, has really been a great thing to them. From what I'm hearing, like, they love the fact that I offer them, like, they're like, man, do I have to come in for this interview? When I tell them about an intake, and they're like, I'm like, no, it's over the phone. They get so happy, and they're like, yeah, whenever you want me, I'm available. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, and then the fact that gas prices are so high, they really like the fact that they can be able to communicate social media wise, or over the phone, or, you know, via Zoom, via Google Meet. So that's what I've gotten from my clients who are millennials and Gen Xers.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Thank you so much. Ernestine, if you don't mind me asking, so how do we go about like creating those type of spaces for the millennials and for the Gen Zs? Like, you know how you created the soup and those type of things like that, where you give people a space to have their own creative ideas, and you know it's funded, through the community, but, how do we do that within this type of organization? Or how do you think that might go? Any idea?
Well, for one, I do have to reiterate what Jasmine was saying about like social media. Honestly, meeting millennials where they are, they're on social media. So whether that's Facebook or Instagram, Snapchat, well, not so much Snapchat anymore, but I think TikTok is kind of taking over the popularity of Snapchat. But it's really kind of having a strong media messaging and, kind of giving them, small digestible bits of information. And then also you'll reach the demographic of, Gen Zers as well. Because I just like Jasmine, I spend a lot of time on social media. I spend a lot of time curating messages on social media to reach more people. And you do have a broad reach. But then I think that, you brought up for everybody here in the audience, the Harperwood Soup, which is a micro granting community dinner. So it is an offshoot of Detroit Soup, which is an opportunity for small business ideas or creative ideas to get micro grants, by people pitching them, in the same way that somebody goes on Shark Tank and pitches an idea and then they win funding. That's the idea behind the soup. So I think having initiatives like that, it really does take marketing and media know-how. Getting it in the papers, getting it out there on social media, getting ads run, and then never underestimate the power of running ads on Facebook. Because I think every generation is on Facebook. I think there might be more baby boomers on Facebook nowadays who are obsessed with it, than any other generation. So I think really reaching people on social media, especially with the pandemic, you've got people who are going to be reticent or reluctant to, really get back out there. But, to Jasmine's point about people are anxious to get back, out into life and enjoy things again. So maybe publicizing and promoting events where you can have a meet and greet or something called an open city where, you get together with folks like myself or like business owners or like financial consultants who can share that knowledge. And so I would say have events like that. Have events that can be in person or virtual or both, and then promote them on social media, promote them in print media. Never underestimate the power of print media because it also shows up on the web. But it's also utilizing social media to really reach people. And I think that, you can really spread the word, but it's also content creation. So if anything, maybe hiring interns who would like to work on certain impact driven projects, have them help with social media and promoting different things and different events.
That sounds good. You guys, I see a lot of stuff in the chat. Anybody want to just get on and say, ask a question? We have a whole lawmaker right here. Let's pick her brain on some things.
I guess technically I would be a Gen Z. And many of my friends find finances, and at one point I did before I became a financial coach, find it very intimidating. Like I have friends who have never checked their credit. Some don't even know what that, total price tag looks like on those student loans yet. They're afraid to check. I literally have to hold my friends' hands, set up their portals with them, help them consolidate their loans. I have to call, and help them find the courage to set up their internet service a lot of times. So how do we make like financial services just like less intimidating? If anyone, has any ideas on that.
I don't, Cecilia, but I agree with what you're saying. Because right now I'm working with Wayne State students hosting financial counseling, and they don't know where to start. And all of those things are scary. So like I stated in the comments, I think that we need to start publicizing financial information that's relevant to Gen Z. Because if we're just hosting it, broadly, they'll be like, well, credit doesn't pertain to me, or buying a home doesn't pertain to me. So I feel like just centering things that might be more relevant to them. Also just educating them at a young age. Some people are just like, it's a gap. With the knowledge that they know in reference to finances, and you have to kind of go, I've been self-educated for being a coach as well, and just being in the banking industry since I was 18. So I was fortunate enough to have that opportunity, but that opportunity isn't for everyone. So everyone, most like my friends don't know how to set up bank accounts, don't know how to use credit cards, don't know what options are out there. So I think that we have to kind of start focusing on exploring the options that are relevant to that particular age group.
And I think this just comes to show where our school system really like fails us.
I wanted to say that.
Oh, for sure, for
I
sure.
don't use, I don't use algebra or like or calculus in real life. I didn't choose to go into the STEM field, but we have people like, especially like Amber, like in property ownership or being a steward or anything like that of your funds, or of being a good citizen, and how finances play into that. So
may I ask Cecily or Angela, why do you think that it is scary or intimidating? Because although they may not be purchasing a house right now, those in their 20s, they'll still be utilizing those features, because like you'll get a credit card or you want a car, and like your credit is going to apply to that. So I mean, I guess why do you think that there is that feeling there?
because they're not getting cars. That's the thing. Like, we're buying beaters because we have a couple $100, or I know for me, like, I had never checked my credit. I just went out and bought a car, and then I had like a 7% interest rate on that car, or maybe it was even higher than that. I don't remember, but that they're not like going out and seeking credit.
Right. I don't even know what their
I
credit
think
score
it's because
is.
it's foreign.
Okay, and I wonder, like, I forgot who said that. Like, I was fortunate enough to learn, like, even my school. I'm from Louisiana, but even here, my daughter's in school here. Like, they started us with bank accounts in elementary, middle school, and like here, it's the credit union that comes. In the South, it was the real bank, but like every Friday or whatever, you can make a deposit. So like if you got an allowance or it was your birthday, they would come to the school and allow you to do that. And I guess for the older kids, it's probably a little bit more knowledge as versus just making a deposit. But I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how did the gap happen.
Are unbanked. So if the parents are unbanked, the kids are most likely unbanked. That's my opinion. So particularly with some of the individuals that we deal with within the FEC, we deal with most of our clients that are unbanked. So if their parents don't know what it is to be in a banking environment or know anything about credit, how can they pass those down to their children?
Right.
That's true too. And things like, we were just talking about this yesterday, things like Cash App and Chime cards, I don't think that helps either. And PayPal cards, because now it's like, oh, well, I have something I could just, or Apple Pay, you can actually get a card now. So I think that's also going to take away a lot of the new people, because if they don't have credit, you don't need it anymore, because they'll just order one of those little cards to have their money put on.
My question then would be that, hearing what you guys are saying is all very important. Like I was saying earlier, we have these great community spaces. We have like all of these different centers in different parts of Metro Detroit. We have Downriver, we have all on the east side, Highland Park. We have all these places. And, from the statistic of what we were seeing earlier today, they said that we need to do some grassroots type of things to help to bridge the gap for Gen Zs and the millennials. So do we need to go back to wearing our purple shirts saying we're financial coaches, and, once COVID is over and all this stuff and things return back to normal, and just kind of post up to get some balloons, like something so simple to say, we're here to give you a financial, education, and make it less intimidating for them to come by and to pass out flyers. I want to hear Ernestine's thought on that. How would you use an organization like us within the community?
Well, one, I really think that it was revolutionary that Elena, I hope I'm saying that right, Elena was saying that, there are places in, was it your daughter's school where they actually come and every Friday they'll help them with bank account information? I do
Yes.
think that more of that needs to be done. I do have to say, like, as far as a caveat before answering Alyssa's question, and then I think Amber even mentioned that, folks, it's a generational curse, kind of, if, you have your parents who are unbanked. And, I have a lot of cousins who are like this, where, they'll just go to the check cash in place, and they'll just, get their, and then put it on a card or something like that, put it on that green dot card, and then just kind of like use that. And so essentially that's a problem, because now you're not building generational wealth. You're not even getting to the point where you're going to get an investment account or getting a compound interest account, because those are things you actually need to have with banking and financial institutions, whether it's a credit union or it's a actual bank. And then that establishes a pattern of you getting used to knowing how to interact. And I think it was Cecilia saying that, like, okay, well, you kind of get scared or overwhelmed, so you don't even check things like credit scores, because you're not used to handling or being involved with, just these financial institutions. They seem intimidating and scary, so you just don't even bother, especially with the rise of Cash App and different things that you're going to be using that don't even really require you to have a bank account. You can just kind of send out money. But maybe in other ways, this could be, with the rise of cryptocurrencies and things, maybe this could be something that we find a way to plug into with low income folks who are unbanked, to be able to just kind of find a space to not be so intimidated by all of that. I'm sorry, Jasmine, you were about to say something. Oh, okay.
I didn't mean to hit that mic.
Oh, no, it's okay. So as far as Alyssa's question is essentially like, how do we do this? I think that's really where the community organizing really comes in. We really have to do a better job, myself as a lawmaker, to be able to plug in with organizations like this one, to be able to, bring that information and to take away the scariness, to make it interactive. I'm a huge fan of infographics. I make them all the time, and then I share information with folks, because if they don't know how to do something, and then, like, I love YouTube and just kind of making things digestible and bringing it to the people, because you have to really meet the people where they are. And if you're like, I don't remember who said it, but we were talking about having a financial seminar on how to be a first-time homeowner, but you're not even really, you've never even bought a car, because you bought, as Cecilia said, a beater for like, $1,000, and you pay cash for that. Then there is no establishment of, this is how I have to work on my credit. This is what I have to do with my banking institution, because that relationship has never been established. So I think back to Elena's point, it has to start in the schools. So I think that policymakers like me and policymakers like senators and state representatives really have to be able to advocate for this, information getting into the hands of kids early. And so then the kids can teach their parents, and then, it'll be a generational curse that is broken. So it really is going to have to take a coordinated effort, and then hard work. It's going to really take, getting that information and communicating it in a streamlined way, digestible way, an approachable way, so that people can get this information and it doesn't seem so daunting.
I think it should definitely be a course in high school.
Yes.
You being a lawmaker, I think that you have more of a leeway to get that to be happening, because like Cecilia said, she don't use her calculus, she don't use algebra. I think that the most I use from algebra is pre-algebra, when I'm using fractions to measure out ingredients for baking. I'll be honest with you, or when I'm trying to figure out my bills or something. But when it comes down to the higher maths, I do not use trigonometry or geometry. But I know every day I need to know how to check my account. I need to know how to handle fraud. And I have friends who don't trust banking systems. Like, I almost literally gave up on the banking system myself when those late fees, like, they would put late fee on late fee, and like, you could call them and be like, someone stole my identity, and you have to go through months of them trying to investigate it at certain banks before you get your money back.
Right, or overdraft fees and things like that, where you punish people for not having money, where it's just like, okay, well, this is a broken system. And
they don't do it to the rich. So it makes it to the point where you don't trust them. I switched over to credit unions because I felt that Bank of America was taking advantage of me. Like, I was being charged. They never even told me that they switched me from a student account while I was still in college to a regular account because they were like, oh, well, you aged out. I'm like, but they're still adults in college, so you can. So I was like, okay, but they were taking $25 a month from me because I didn't have how much they felt I should have in my bank account. So those type of things can really.
Those are lessons that we need to educate people on, those type of lessons, like
Right.
what you
Right.
investment. I have one more question before we have to kind of let you go. So, you know, in the perfect world, if you can just kind of tell us, like, what would our community look like if we all had this education, this financial education?
I think it would be building community wealth, you know, because that's something that, you know, I'm very active with the Michigan Municipal League and the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments. And there are a lot of these organizations that are there to help communities build capacity so that if you want to create coffee shops or build new small businesses, then you can do that. But I think that it really has to come down to the financial responsibility. And I even hate that term because it's very, I feel like it connotes that people who are on the lower end of the earning potential are irresponsible somehow, you know, whereas like it's just our system that has failed us. We haven't been taught these kind of things in school, like, you know, why do I need trigonometry and algebra, which I've never used ever, versus bookkeeping, versus, you know, knowing how to balance books, because anybody can be an entrepreneur, anybody can start a small business. But it's like, you know, I, you know, work with organizations that teach small businesses, you know, how to, you know, grow your business, how to scale, how to get a business plan, and how to actually open a brick and mortar. And I think that is very valuable, and it's more valuable than, say, getting a bachelor's degree in, you know, business, because they're going to teach you the basics. And I think that it really, you know, like, yeah, somebody said how to read a contract, you know, those are the basic things that I think everybody should be being taught. And I feel like it's too little too late that our school systems are beginning to wake up to the fact that, you know, people are going to have more of a chance of being an entrepreneur, being a small business owner, you know, than they are of, you know, going and, you know, really being successful as an employee. You know, I hate to say it that way because we haven't invested anything in workforce development really. So we really should be investing in, you know, ways for people to do it themselves, you know, and so I do see questions down here, and I didn't notice the questions until just now. But so I'm sorry if I've ignored questions that have come in. I didn't realize they were there. But I think that it's really up to the community and leaders to push, you know, corporations to do better, push, you know, organizations to kind of step up and to support, you know, nonprofit entities and, you know, community organizations that are really helping to, you know, build that sense of we're in this together, and we need to, like, a healthy, wealthy community is one where, you know, for lack of a better term, a rising tide lifts all boats. So when we're all educated, you know, you don't have to worry about this weird zero-sum game that we play in our political discourse, you know, when it comes to finances and wealth. And it's almost like, oh, if you're poor, you're that way because, you know, you made bad choices. It's like, no, you can't live in a system where it's just like you're being constantly pulled down, where you have to, say, take the bus, or you can't really afford a car, or and then in Michigan with our car insurance, it is ridiculous. So, like, that was one of the biggest things that when I first got into the legislature was pushing for, like, you know, more of this insurance, you know, kind of like our rates have to be lower, and that's a real battle. But, you know, so things have to be affordable, and then wages have to match that. So in addition to getting that education in the hands of people, you know, young, and then getting into the hands of people often, so, you know, having things like this frequently, all the time, having courses where they can go through that, I think that's something that we're beginning to see rise with, you know, my generation, and then Gen Zers, you know, so we're really going to push for more of that. And even with investing and stuff, like, you know, where you see Robinhood and all of these different, you know, apps where you can invest yourself. That used to be something that was just only the wealthy thought that they could do. But now you see more everyday people getting into investing because it's now been made simple. It's now been made something that is accessible to everybody. So my job is to push for accessibility, for information, and to share the wealth, because it can't be a, oh, if they win, then we lose mentality. So that's really how you build that community wealth, you know, getting that knowledge, getting it early, getting it out there often, and collaborating.
Well, thank you. that was very insightful and impactful. I hope you guys got something out of that. We're definitely going to have a sheet up, and we want you to go ahead and put your thought and your input on that sheet. Once again, it was like, how do we help? How do we become more visible in our community? And like, what are some of the challenges that, Gen Z and Gen Z and millennials are facing? And a lot of that was brought up today. And we're going to be putting that out there for you guys to go ahead and take a look at and reading. I'm just very happy that Ernestine was able to take time out of her schedule today to show up for us.
Thank you.
Right.
And can I real quick say that a lot of these topics, I host a podcast, a weekly podcast called Quick to Politic. And in it, we talk about, all of these issues we've had in January. I feel like every episode was all about financial literacy, investing and, managing money. So, and then investing in things like real estate. So, Quick to Politic is the podcast. I also have a YouTube channel where we talk about community wealth building and different initiatives and small business ownership. So, please feel free to, and also visit my website. It's ErnestineLyons.com for more of this community wealth building information. So, thank you guys so much for having me here.
Can you drop the link?
Oh, yeah, I'll put all my links in here.
All right, and Angela, did you want to talk about, or Jennifer, our upcoming topic?